Good morning, Mr. Bouwe.
Good morning, Najma. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's always a privilege to be on your radio station.
The pleasure is ours. We truly appreciate the time you've taken. As I said in the introduction, this has become quite, I would say, contentious for many parents that are looking to school their children in the best way possible. And every parent is looking for the best options or the best opportunity for their children. And I think homeschooling, perhaps in the past, and you started in the year 2000, so you would know exactly what the trend has been and how it's changed since then. Is there more of an attraction to homeschooling now?
Yes, most certainly. So in the middle 90s or late 90s, home education was a fringe phenomenon, but yet since the 2010s, it's become increasingly mainstream. So whereas in the past, if you said I'm home educating my children, they didn't know what you're talking about. If you tell somebody now that you're homeschooling, the general answer is yes, we've got family members or we've got friends that are doing this. So yeah, it's become a common practice in society.
Right. Now, I think what I understood in the past from what homeschooling was, and probably still is that the parent becomes the teacher at home. So, which means that there's a completely different dynamic to being in a classroom at school. Has that trend changed?
No, home education is essentially the same. So the law defines home education in terms of where the education takes place, namely in the home, which is a bit of a restrictive definition. But in general, most of the education is given by the parents, but the parents are free to make use of tutors or online platforms to enhance their education. So the parents don't have to take the full load of all the education. The important thing is that they are in charge of it, and they must decide what is the best for the kid. Is it the best that I handle this piece of the education, or is it better that I use somebody else to do it, or a service provided by a service provider? So the essence of home education, the parent is in charge to direct the education of their children.
And do you find that the parent who chooses to be the teacher, are they equipped? Are they managing? Have they been successful? And what were the challenges?
Yes, I think there is home education has got a record of success, and parents have shown that despite not being qualified teachers, they can do a good job. And the research in other countries shows that home educators or home learners perform as good or better than their counterparts in schools. The thing is, there are curriculums that are specially designed for homeschoolers that make it very easy for parents to perform the function. And then those curriculums are then enhanced by all kinds of online facilities. So if you as a parent don't understand something, there are platforms where with the best expert on a certain, or the best teacher on a certain subject, can explain it to your child. So you just utilize those resources, and you get the best teachers to teach your child on a specific point where necessary. So the not being a qualified teacher, I think, is in no ways inhibiting or limiting the parent to give their child a good education.
I'm just picturing this as a parent, and if you have children in different grades, obviously, that how do you manage that? Because you have to have discipline in terms of time management, just like they would be waking up for school every morning, or however you set your routine. But have you found that parents have managed to school children of different ages in different grades?
Yes, yet a lot of parents start off with the traditional schools curriculum, and a traditional schools curriculum is based on the division of knowledge into subjects and grades. And if you
Right,
then strictly try to follow such a curriculum with children of different ages in the same household, it's becoming difficult. And that is why many parents move towards other education approaches that can accommodate children of different ages. So
mm,
there is a diversity of education approaches like unit studies, classical education, unschooling, whatever. And
mm,
those education approaches are much more capable of handling different children of different ages and different interests within the same family. And
right.
then they also utilize uh, the older children to help the younger children, and that builds a lot of skills under the younger older children. They now learn to
Right.
become teachers as well.
Uh-huh. So there is an added benefit, right? And how would you compare homeschooling to traditional schooling?
I think the biggest uh, difference is that in home education there is a diversity that parents can choose from. There's a diversity of education approaches, on which I've touched already, and a
Mm,
diversity of curriculums. And it's almost like uh, when somebody from the former Soviet Union um,
mm,
um, came to the West and they go into the shop. In the Soviet Union, you had only one bread. Now they come
mm,
into a Western shop and there are 20 different types of breads and they don't know how to choose. So I think that is the big difference, the diversity that enables the parents to customize the education to the specific needs of each individual child. And I
mhm.
think that is the big power of home education.
Absolutely, it sounds very encouraging. And then, how at the end of it do you write your, exam, your matric external exam, to then eventually go into mainstream tertiary, for example, or any other choice of career?
Yeah, in general, yet you need to write some, let's say, exit exam to prove that you've got certain um, skills and knowledge to the outside world. So home educators use matric options that are available. So after they finish, let's say grade 9, or they reach the age of 15, they can either do a national senior certificate through distance, the providers of distance education that offer that. But then
Mhm.
there are also alternative matric options available to them, like the American GED system or the British Cambridge system, and they get matric qualification from um, those organizations, and then then the world is open for them.
Mhm. Now, before we talk about the benefits of traditional schooling, I'm very interested in knowing the trend during the, pandemic, the last 2 years, and moving forward. I think a lot of the parents were not equipped to teach their children from home. Online learning became a norm. Uh, Things that children needed to adjust to, especially those that were obviously in traditional schooling environment, not having human contact, all of those issues that we all struggled with. But especially in the learning environment, there was a huge shift. It was a paradigm shift towards how to learn and teach, right? So do you think that the homeschooling system then took on a different approach, or was it always there? Did it just become simpler to apply because you were already, and I'm not talking about the homeschooler as in the one that was being homeschooled, but the one that had to move from traditional to home?
Yes, the pandemic forced all parents or to or let's say many parents, to now homeschool. It was
Mm.
basically a global experiment on homeschooling, and
Right.
home education has grown with a quantum leap during the pandemic.
Right.
Our expectations were that there was this quantum leap uh, of growth during the pandemic, and our expectation was that after the pandemic, or let's say after the schools have started opening up, a lot of children are going to return,
Mm.
and the numbers would shrink again and then continue to grow steadily as it did before. But
Mm.
the, we didn't experience any significant pullback. So obviously, a lot of children went back to school. They they effectively uh, um, continued with their school program remotely. So a lot of schools
Right.
were well, not well prepared, but they could react fairly effectively to the pandemic, and they could continue offering their existing program online, and then it was easy
Mm.
for the children to return. But
Right.
when it comes to home education, which is outside the school system, it grew with a quantum leap, and then it just continued to grow. It didn't really pull back.
Right. Right.
I think another big thing that happened is there were a number of new online school providers that were entering the market. So this was an ideal opportunity for such organizations. They probably have been preparing before the time, and they started launching their product, and it's changed the landscape to such an extent that the government was forced to now start thinking of an online school policy on which they're currently
Right.
working.
Yes, yes. In fact, universities also doing the same thing. Um, you know, the one, if I may just make this side statement, if you like, is that parents either discovered that they could never teach their children because they were suddenly forced to, and it was the most difficult thing to do, or they realized that they can. So, and I know that some parents really struggled. In fact, teachers did too. So there was that huge adjustment for both, well, the triangular system, the teacher, the learner, and the parent. In your experience, have you found that parents adjusted easily, or if you're doing it by choice, then obviously you're going to prepare yourself. Most parents were not doing it by choice then. So what would you say were the benefits in terms of going back to traditional schooling again? And you said most went back. It's not fair to make a comparison because we are not promoting homeschooling, neither are we promoting traditional schooling. The choice at the end of the day is that of the parent and the learner. But how would you then weigh the two in terms of the benefits of traditional schooling then, as someone who is so well versed or well experienced in the homeschooling environment?
Okay, I just want to, before I try to answer that question, say you make the statement that parents have to teach their children, and that
Uh-huh.
is that 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 idea is very much based on the concept that a child is an empty vessel, and the purpose of a teacher is to put information in the head of the child. But a
Right.
child is actually a natural learner. Every child wants to learn. So I think a lot of children,
Correct.
parents have discovered, but if I create the correct environment, my child will learn on its own. It will learn the thing that he or she's interested in, and I just need to create the environment to make it conducive for learning. So I hope a lot of parents learned that a child wants to learn and can learn on its own, and I'm just a facilitator and a director of that process. I
Right.
don't
Right.
need
Right.
to be a teacher with specialized skills capable of putting stuff in the head of my children. So,
I like that description. So in other words, just you don't need that, hence not the special training You need to be just so spontaneous with the learning. And I think that's where the fun of it all comes in, and the difference then.
Yeah, and the big benefit that a parent has above any teacher is the parent knows the child. The parent knows
Right.
what the child is interested in and what the child is not interested in, and what the child can do and what the child cannot do. And it can adapt the education of the child to that individual child. And that makes and that gives the parent the edge over a teacher that doesn't know
Mhm.
the children, or that over time it can only learn the children to a limited extent.
Right. So my one other concern would be, in terms of homeschooling, there isn't any social or peer interaction. During the pandemic, we were all isolated, and we realized what an impact it had on our mental health. Children are natural social beings. We are all natural social beings. How do you overcome that for the child?
Yeah, it's a very important point. So parents have to put in some effort to become part of support groups and collaborate with other homeschooling parents. So on the internet and through WhatsApp groups, there are a lot of support groups. So you must go out and find those groups, and then yeah, come together for a play group every week or whatever, um, to meet the social needs of the children. So yeah, you'll have to do that yourself, but there are the groups that can enable that.
Right. So now coming back to the question on, the advantages of traditional schooling, and then we do have that which separates the parent from the teacher, as it were, uh, in terms of professional approach to teaching. What would your comment be on that?
Yeah, I think the traditional school has got the advantage that it's a package deal. They provide a bit of education and a bit of socialization, and the parents can basically outsource their responsibility or the education task to the school, and 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 that is very comfortable for many parents. It is also comfortable for uh, with a situation where both parents work outside the home and they don't have the time uh,
Mm.
to attend to their children. So yeah, the benefit of school is the parents have got uh, can use the time to perform work outside the house.
Mm-hmm.
um, and to homeschool when both parents are working is possible, but it is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, and the other thing is parents are now taking full responsibility for the education of their child, and they often feel uh, ill-equipped, and yeah, and
Yeah.
that is
Right. Do
difficult
you
for
think
parents.
Right. Do you feel that, or have you seen in your experience that homeschooling is more of a privilege, in terms of affordability, in terms of having mom at home and able to be to fulfill that role? Has it become a privilege? Is it a privilege?
No, I think home education is possible um, by parents from all socioeconomic uh, groups. So it is not something for the rich only. It can be done by all parents. So there's a lot of free resources available. So in order to get curriculums and stuff, money should not be a reason why you cannot get it. And you can
Mm.
make use of all kinds of public facilities like the public library uh, to provide a lot of educational material. And if, let's say, you've got a family where parents are outside the house for a lot of a great part of the day, then they can
Mm-hmm.
utilize family members or community members to assist them in that task. And and especially in poorer communities, actually generally have more of a sense of community and stronger family ties, which empowers them to do that easier than the more isolated and suburban families.
Right. And now just quickly towards the end of our discussion, can you give us more details on your interaction with the department officials? And you've been doing this since 2004. How welcoming is this in the department? And I know that there's a separate body for homeschooling now in South Africa, right?
Yes, we have been dealing with the different branches of government for years. So mostly with the executive branch of government, where there is conflict between parents and officials. That is where the Pestalozzi Trust yet assists parents to resolve those conflict situations. But recently, with the adoption of the home education policy, there was a circular distributed last year to instruct the different provinces to establish joint liaison committees. So that is starting to become a very fruitful engagement process where home education parents and officials can now engage on how do we implement this home education policy given the diversity of the practice on the ground. So it's and then we are also engaging with legislators, because there's a new education amendment bill submitted to Parliament that is currently being considered by Parliament, and the Pestalozzi Trust and various associations are engaging with members of Parliament on that. So yeah, there are multiple engagements on multiple branches of government.
How do South African standards compare with international standards in homeschooling?
I think we are one of the top 5 countries. So the leading country on home education is the United States. Yeah, there I think home learners are almost, or maybe even over 10% of the school population of the USA. In South Africa, there are no accurate numbers. There's no good research on it, but we could be start getting to 1 or 2%, which is a significant percentage. And I think countries like the UK, Russia, Australia are also countries in the same league in terms of, if you look at percentage of the school-going population, I think we are in that league. So I think we're in the top 5 in terms of numbers per capita.
Right. In standard?
I don't know. There's been there in the USA. There's a lot of research that says the home learners perform as good or better than children that attend schools.
Right.
There's not a significant body of research in South Africa that we can confidently make those type of statements yet. But we try to encourage that more research is done so we can start giving accurate answers to those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be very interesting if we can get an answer for that. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, Mr. Bouwe van der Eems. The information has been, I'm sure, informative for our viewers and listeners. And if you have any more questions, you can obviously post them on our live stream. And we'll pick them up and forward them to Mr. Eems. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Next up, we move into our travel segment after this break.